How many people are thinking about selling your home? Okay, all right, so this is it. We are really, really lucky to get Alan DiStefano here. Alan is the immediate past president of the Board of Realtors for the state of New Hampshire and is currently regional vice president for the National Association of Realtors. I've been doing this kind of seminar for a number, like 8-10 years, and Alan is absolutely the best at doing this of anyone that I know. So he is doing this as a personal favor. He's coming back and presenting to this group because he usually doesn't present anymore. He is really doing his national stuff. So as you all know, you are going to have copies of this PowerPoint to take home. You've got the cards and pens on your table to ask them questions. And what he's going to do is he's going to go through where we are nationally with real estate trends and where we are locally with real estate trends, and touch on, some basic things like how do you choose a realtor and what should you do when you need to sell your home. So he is the main event today. But before we jump into Alan, I want to give you a couple of updates on Riverwoods. We heard you. We heard you. Okay. Today, I am getting, by special delivery, as I'm leaving here, going back to the office, I am getting samples of lighter wood cabinets and lighter flooring options. Okay? All right. So, we definitely heard you. We're working on it. We will have answers to you very soon, well before you have to make your decision. Okay? So, that's good. Charter Connections is wonderful, but Charter Connections is for you guys to connect. So I understand there's a lot of questions about personalizations, but if you can direct those to my good friend Natalie, who is newly promoted as a personalizations coordinator. Let's give her a round of applause. She's brand new with this role. Send her your questions, give her a moment. Give her a moment to figure out the answer, because it's not like we have the answers and we're hiding them from you. We have to figure all of this out, which often includes talking to an architect, talking to the construction guy, talking to a number of people, so it's not easy to answer all of your questions. So just give her a moment. I also want to introduce a brand new member of our team, Jenny Marks, back here. Wave your hand. Jenny is our new Natalie. We threw her in at the deep end. This is her second day, so it's really busy. So again, we are training new people. Give us a little moment, but we have a really, really strong colleague in Jennifer. I'm really thrilled that she's agreed to join our team, and I know she's going to bring a lot of talent and organization to our service to you. Okay, Charter Connections. Has anyone not signed up for Charter Connections? Okay, please do. It's going to be really a good way for you all to connect, to say who wants to go to the BSO, who wants to go see the sandcastles in Hampton. Give you a chance to get to know each other kind of offline. For the personalizations, questions, and answers, what we're going to do is we're going to put all the questions and answers out by email to you so that you have it permanently, so you don't have to search for it. So every time we have questions and answers, you will get them in your inbox. So that's how we're going to get them. We also are working on a description of the building. So very, very specific and detailed engineering. What is it comprised of? All of the details that all of you engineers would really like to know. So we're going to work on all of those things. So trust us that we are working on getting you the answers, and that we will get them to you as soon as possible. But the one answer is we will have lighter options for you. Okay. So Jennifer Marks. Okay. All right. We are, believe it or not, we have hit 70 for our wait list, which is awesome. And that was without even trying. So our very first event to the general public is going to be tomorrow at the Sheraton Portsmouth. So if you have any friends that are interested in Riverwoods Durham, please encourage them to sign up and come to one of our events. We're only having a handful of events, I think 3 events this year. But if you have anyone who's like, oh gosh, all I hear about is Riverwoods Durham is sold out, so there's nothing open for me. Tell them, yes, you can join Riverwoods Durham, you can join the wait list, and there are opportunities, so please pass the word. And I thought I corrected this spelling on the last slide, but I'm having email problems, so I probably didn't, but our grammar working is going to be August 21. We were at the site to, Friday, walking the site, trying to figure out where the tent is going to be and where we're going to have a lunch afterwards. We're going to have a groundbreaking and a lunch afterwards. I'll just tell ladies, no heels. Wear flats, wear comfortable shoes, because if we are going to be on site, it's going to be rocky. So just wear comfortable shoes. And I think I told this group, we are going to have everyone park at the Evangelical Church. We're shuttling you to the site, because that's the only way we can manage it. There'll be about 300 people at this event. So that is going to be our next event. Pod 1 people, do you know who you are? Pod people. Okay, if you haven't signed up with Natalie, please sign up for your first MEP appointment, which starts July 31st. Okay? Those are all my housekeeping notes. I know you're going to love hearing from Alan. He's got a lot of information to share. So I'd like to ask you to give him a very warm welcome. Alan DiStefano.
Well, thank you and good morning. How's everybody today? Good. Is this too loud? No. With or without? Does it matter? Okay, great. I want to make sure you can hear me clearly. Thank you for having me here today. As indicated, it's been a little while since I was here. I did this for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years, and then took a break and started to pursue a career towards national representation of the National Association of Realtors. So it's quite an honor for me this year to be their regional vice president in 2019. As you see, I was past president of the state. Service is what is in my blood. It's what I love to do. And I'm here today to talk to you about the real estate market and what might happen in the next couple of years, what the indicators are, what you might be able to do differently for your property. I understand that you're all getting ready to sell your homes and move into a new part of your life, and I congratulate you for that because it's really exciting for you at this time. Realtors and representation, we'll go over that. Today's market conditions, local and national components, affordability, buyer's market versus seller's market, home buying and selling, questions and answers. That's when I'm going to leave the building. See, I just talked to a speaker, he says, you got to keep them laughing. So realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors, and they adhere to a strict code of ethics. Some people don't know the difference, perhaps, between a realtor and a licensee. There's approximately 11,000 licensees in the state, but only 6,000 realtors in the state. Realtors have to abide by a code of ethics. That's extremely important for you because that means you have the creme de la creme. You have the best of the best that adhere to a strict code of ethics. And we're also self-policed. If we find that somebody in our organization is violating the code of ethics, they're reported, they go to a grievance committee, and then we have a discussion about that as how to correct behavior. So you're getting the best of the best when you hire a realtor. Forms of agency. In most of your cases, you're going to be hiring a listing agent, a seller's agent. They're an advocate for you. You become their client. Their sole responsibility is your best interest at that point. Now, there are different types of agency out there. One of the things that you'll see coming in with buyers is buyer agency, who typically represent the buyers. It doesn't mean they're adversarial, it just means that they represent the best interest of that particular buyer. You also have a thing called dual agency in New Hampshire. That does happen from time to time. And then very simply put, it may be if this young lady listed her house, and then this young man over here listed his house, but you wanted to buy her house, you're both clients. At that point, you're in a dual agency. In New Hampshire, it's allowable to show a property as a dual agent, but before you consider a contract, you have to have what they call informed consent. It's a form, you are given that form in advance of a contract. So if you are ever in a dual agency, ask about that informed consent. Make sure you have that. Really, it's just leveling the playing field and making sure everybody knows who's who in the transaction. Disclosure is required by New Hampshire state law. When you list your property for sale, you will be first given a New Hampshire agency form. That form will identify all different forms of agency. You'll see in there one of them called sub-agency. Not many markets practice that anymore. If you see that, and you have an agent say they still practice sub-agency, I would question it and ask why they still do it. It's really not an advantage for a seller, so I caution you against that. But that agency form is required on the first business meeting. That first business meeting will be the first time some realtor comes to talk to you and discuss listing your property. You want to make sure that they go over that form first and foremost. They discuss it with you, and that you fully understand all forms of agency and who represents who. What's up with the market? Inventory's been high for 5 years. They had approximately 9 to 12 months worth of inventory for quite a period of time, and now it's the lowest in 10 years. You probably heard that in the news. We're in a housing crunch. We have no inventory. Typically, homes are selling in approximately 30 days, sometimes less. Literally, if a house is priced correctly, it comes on the market, the agents are doing their job. Typically, within the first 30 days, you'll have possibly even multiple offers on the property. And that's another discussion that we can have about multiple offers, but it's something to discuss. Prices are near historic highs. And what they mean by that is, we saw a really ramp up in the market for 2002, 3, 4, and 5, and a little bit of 6. And then, of course, we all remember the market crash of 2008, where everything went to hell. Well, the good news is our prices have come right back up to where they were in that pre-crash market. The pricing is really, really strong right now. Again, supply and demand, inventory is at an all-time low, and it is expensive to build right now. So that makes an existing house very desirable for people, because builders don't want to go out on a limb and start building spec housing. It's just too expensive. I was saying earlier that a typical average home used to be somewhere between $105 to $115 a square foot to build. Now you're typically pushing closer to $150 a square foot. And for homes like yours, which are premium homes, you're probably looking at, with fine finishes, higher end details, you're looking at somewhere north of $150 a square foot just to build a house like that. So you can't typically build today what you can buy. We'll go back just real quick. Interest rates are relatively low, but still climbing. So more importantly is, I just came from Chicago on Saturday. I flew back in, and I talked to Lawrence Yun, the national economist for the National Association of Realtors. Right now, we are seeing interest rates creeping up there. They just did a rate adjustment. The Feds did a rate adjustment, and they're talking 2 more adjustments. The rate right now for a 30-year fixed is typically going over 5% now. Most lenders are actually recommending to people to get 7-in-1 ARMs so that they can get a lower rate, an adjustable rate mortgage, so that they can get the lower rate. So you have to be mindful of that, because as that rate climbs, the affordability index decreases. Simple as that. It's simple math. As that rate climbs up, it's going to be harder and harder for buyers to afford a property. Their income is up there, but the lenders look at that very carefully. And unlike pre-2008 crash, the lenders have a lot more regulations now. The Dodd-Frank bill put into place quite a few regulations for lenders, requiring them to toe the line differently and not have as much predatory lending out there. So what that means to you is, A lender isn't likely to just give out money without making sure it's accurately backed up by facts. Because if they are found to have made that kind of mistake, it could be as much as $1 million fine per infraction by the federal government. So they have to be extremely careful. So as interest rates are going up, that is going to affect affordability. We're going to look here at the non-condominium sales. This is single-family residential homes. Rockingham County is what the slide guru put together for us. And you'll see that right now, 2014 to 15, the percent change was 6.4%. Median price was $350,000. And the units sold was down slightly at just under 4,000 units sold. Now the reason it's down slightly is lack of inventory. It's not for lack of desire, it's lack of inventory. There's just not enough houses on the market. And then statewide, it's back to being an unbelievable market. Just about 18,000 units sold, percentage change up just 0.6. Median price is up a little bit. It's interesting, when you look at that median price, if this were Massachusetts, the median price is approximately $450,000. So, although we're New England, by the way, is one of the most expensive areas for housing. And it's up 6.5%. Residential sales, part one, the unsustainable boom, we talked about that. Back when the market was shooting up, there was no way to sustain that. They had predatory lending out there where anybody who, jokingly, we used to say if they could fog a mirror, they could get a loan. And that's exactly what would happen. They'd walk in, the banks would just give them the money, it was no problem. It was unsustainable though. There was no way to hold that value and the lenders couldn't continue to loan money on it. After that, you had a 25% decrease in the crash of the market. And that's a very accurate number. Basically, if you went back and historically looked at the numbers, if you just took the high points and knocked 25% off, that's where the market was. It just dropped right down. But interestingly enough, since 2012, we've now seen a 32% increase. So we've already evaporated the decrease and we've exceeded that and gone ahead now. We'll talk a little bit more about what we see coming up in the future. Values in the short-term approach, you can see that they decreased. That all makes perfect sense. At the end of the day, when the market crashed, you couldn't afford houses. Stock market crashed down and you didn't have the money anymore. People were losing jobs. Prices go down. It's simple. But if they look at a reasonable approach over time, you'll see that the market itself has come right back up to where it was before. I wouldn't say that it's really exceeding it, but it's certainly come back. And that's a sustainable market at this point. Part of my reasoning for that is very simply, jobs are out there. We're at the lowest unemployment rate ever. I mean, I talked to 2 contractors this morning on my way in, and both of them were complaining about the fact that they can't find anybody to work. They can't even get general laborers right now. Everybody's working and they just have no available employees. We'll talk about a little bit about the national picture. Single-family home construction far below the level needed to alleviate the inventory shortage. That is unbelievable. Now, unlike New Hampshire, in the rest of the United States, there are some huge, huge builders, large construction companies that build thousands of homes a year. If you're in Florida, I have a place down in the Villages. Well, down there, it's crazy. They need more houses. They just build another 1,000 houses and sell them in a couple of months. It's just that way down there. But around here, you don't have that. And nationwide, you don't have that. They don't have enough houses being built, so that's why they're looking for available inventory. Modest home sales changed 18-19. Again, that's inventory related. We have plenty of buyers out there, just not enough inventory. So they're looking for just a modest change on that. Rents, they're seeing rising rents and expect home prices to rise in their community. So rents, let's talk about that for a minute. Rents have been going up. So one of the components that we were talking about was maybe one of your considerations might be looking at your market. Do you put your house on the market now and then rent somewhere for the next 2 years? Might be a good idea depending on where your house is and where your market is. Because first and foremost, you're going to plan to move, so maybe you put your house on the market while the market's hot. You have desirability because you have buyers out there in the marketplace that want to see it. And then maybe you rent someplace else. And that also goes into affordability because renting, quite frankly, is going to continue to get more expensive. I know in my particular town, they are building another 32 units worth of rental. And we all shook our head and said, why would they do that? They've already sold out over 50% of those, they're not even built yet. So there's definitely a desire for rents. Lean inventory and steady sales, that's common sense. So it's supply and demand, right? Same thing if we go to the gas pump. If we go to the gas pump and we don't have enough oil, prices go up, it's the same thing. If you buy a loaf of bread in the store and all of a sudden they have a problem with making bread, that price of bread is going to go up. And it's the same thing with real estate. Right now, no inventory, you get the best price for your house at this point. Again, they're looking for the rise on the mortgage rates and the jobs. Economy grows and adds jobs. Nationally, they should be able to add some jobs. It's been, again, a historic low for unemployment, which is fabulous. It's great to see everybody working, but it's having an effect in our marketplace as far as being able to build houses and continue to make the economy thrive. And then they're talking about, this is again a national slide, not New Hampshire per se. They are looking at the prices increases, not quite as strong as they were back in the 2000s, but that is of course because we took quite a hit. So you're going to see the median high price come up a little bit. Talk about income needed to buy a house. Very interesting slide here. So back in the peak of 2006, typically to buy a house, you needed almost $70,000 worth of income. In 2015, when this last slide was last put together on that, it was approximately $54,000 worth of income to be able to buy a house. So very interesting, back in 2006, the market had jumped way up and you needed more income to be able to buy it. 2015, the market was still working on its way back up and you needed less income. Now, income required versus median household income, and again, you can see it. The median household income versus the required income is quite a disparity in that, especially in 15. The median household income now is $70,000 versus you only needed approximately $62,000 to be able to buy a house. So it's a very big difference now. People have a lot more cash. There's a lot more cash floating around out there. Inventory is the difference. We were just talking about that. Seller's market, there's fewer homes on the market. Again, timing is going to be everything. When we talk about timing, you're going to see a slide that says when's the best time. It says spring. Spring, summer is always the best time in New Hampshire. Other parts of the United States, the market is very different. I talked to some of my counterparts in the other parts of the United States, and they're all taking summer off and they're enjoying themselves on vacation, and they're like, what are you talking about? This is our crazy time of year. We're all busy right now. We don't have time to take a day off. But again, sales are occurring quickly and sellers do have the leverage. Multiple offers. Let's talk about that for a minute. You have to be very careful. Make sure your advocate is there, your listing agent is there, and if you get into a multiple offer situation, ask some questions. There's things that they should be doing. There are clauses in the contracts coming in called escalation clauses, which basically says a buyer may put in an escalation clause that says, I don't care what comes in for an offer, I'll pay 5% over the highest offer. So you have to be aware of that as a seller. Is that good for you? Could be. You have to really talk with your agent about that and really decide whether or not that's going to be the right move for you. I can tell you, I just did a multiple offer situation where the seller went back to the people at the same price, and then they both said, sure, we'll accept that price. But what was different was the terms of the contract. One had a whole bunch of inspections, the other contract not so many inspections. So the seller decided to take the one with less risk. So remember that as a seller, you want to really look at the contracts and understand them. You want the least amount of risk. I always tell sellers that I want to sell your property for the highest price reasonably possible that you'll accept at the best terms that meet your needs. It's a very simple concept. The terms have to meet your needs. And I'll also remind you that you're a seller, you're in control. You're not going to be told you have to move out in 30 days. You're in control of that contract. So you can decide, oh, well, I like your numbers, but I need 90 days. Speaking of that component, just as a reminder, if there's financing involved, typical financing component today is 45 to 60 days out. So if you get a contract on your property and it involves financing, honestly, unless that buyer is absolutely stellar and they've already done all the homework in advance and had everything into the bank, it's going to be 45 to 60 days. Just an appraisal alone can take up to 4 weeks. Buyer more likely to offer higher? That's possible. Certain segments of the market, not all segments. I can tell you that in the last 50 transactions, I've probably had 3 that have offered over asking price. One of them, we're just negotiating one for $850,000, and it's a mathematician type buyer. And he came in and he said, well, I've done a calculation that all properties have been selling for 3.37% less than asking price. So he made his offer that way. Of course, the seller didn't really react to that too well and said, that's good for you, that's not what I'm willing to accept. So the seller countered back with a little higher number. In the buyer's market, inventories rise. Yes, it does. Right now, we're not seeing that going to be a problem for a while now. When I was giving this speech probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, that definitely was the case. It was a buyer's market still, you know, and the sellers were still scrambling to find a buyer that was willing to pay the price, and the buyers had control. That's not the case today. Greater selection, that is true in a buyer's market, that's not the case. And seller more likely to offer incentives. So let's talk about incentives. Being careful that you're not necessary to offer a whole bunch of incentives to sell your property. You may have heard or seen things where they say, oh, let me offer an agent bonus. That's not the way to get it done. Every agent out there is working to make a commission. Remember, we wake up every single day unemployed. A lot of people don't know that. We wake up every day unemployed. We don't have a job. We don't get paid until the commission. I'm closing $5 million in deals this week. So it's going to be a good week. We get to go to the restaurant on Friday night. But the reality is, we wake up every day unemployed. So we don't get paid until the deal's done and we get the commission. So don't necessarily offer incentives. If you feel that your property is not moving, look at what might be causing that not to move. Is it price? Did someone price it too high? Caution against the over-aggressive new agent who likes to price things high just because they want the new listing. Those guys are great, and I was one of them 21 years ago. So when I got in this business 21 years ago, I was out there telling everybody, oh yeah, you can get whatever you want for your property, no problem at all, let's get it. And then 6 months later, I'm like, that didn't work out too well. And it's always sometimes better to be the second agent in the door, by the way, because the first agent prices things too high. But don't do that. Listen to your agent, please. Listen to the details of the market. Have them provide you a proper market analysis for your property. That's extremely important. Even with recent price increases, there's still unique buying opportunities, relatively low interest rates. That is true. Again, if I'm closing one on Thursday that's $1.3 million, and the buyer ended up with a 2.6 rate. Very qualified buyer, lots of money in the bank, so the bank was more than happy to work with that buyer. Trending towards higher prices and higher interest rates, that's a true statement. Today's market won't last forever. We all know that, it will change. Current national stats are saying 2 years out. That's what we're looking at, is a 2-year correction. Keep in mind, New Hampshire typically follows a year behind Massachusetts, so we could be looking at a 2.5 to 3 year correction. More sales means less inventory will mean more leverage for sellers. That's where you're at today. Sellers' leverage is today, it's as simple as that. Multiple offer situations we talked about. Again, being cautious. Don't be overly aggressive as a seller thinking you're going to go in and get into a multiple offer situation. that doesn't always work out too well. Your goal as a seller, get your property sold for the highest and best price possible. Simple as that. Being greedy and aggressive doesn't work. Best time to sell, they're going to tell you spring. It's spring, summer in New Hampshire. Your market actually is a little bit different. You don't get as much snow over here on the seacoast as they do inland maybe, so you might have a little bit more of a fall market. It really depends on your demographic, quite frankly. If you're in a vacation home area, it's definitely all summer long. If you're in an area where there are great schools and that the families are looking to move into, they want those kids in school before September. Getting ready. Again, choose a realtor. And I always tell people, I don't care who you choose. I really don't. Choose a realtor. Do your research. Talk to people. Talk to 2 or 3. Listen to references. If you know somebody that said, hey, so-and-so did a great job for me, interview them. And I always remind you as a seller, you're not just interviewing me, I'm interviewing you. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're talking with that particular agent. They're also interviewing you to decide if they want to work with you. Personalities don't always work together. Determine home value, again, market analysis, very simply put. They're going to use comps, they're always looking in the past. Appraisers look in the past. Agents, brokers, we look in the future. We say, what's the future of the market going to do? How much more do we think we can push the market in order to get that price up there? But appraisers and buyers are looking in the past. So I'll talk about that real quick one moment. Think about buyers. Buyers are the most educated they have ever been in the recent years ever. They have internet, they have access to all public data. They know what's going on in the market. I often tell sellers sometimes, they know more than we do because they've sat home and done their research. And they come in and they know what properties are selling for, they know what percentage of the market they should be selling for, and they're very well aware as to what's going on with that property. So don't look at a buyer as thinking that they don't know and I can get an extra 50 grand out of them because they just don't know the market. They know the market very well. Inspect the physical plan. Big deal. Let's talk about the house for a minute. Excuse me. So let's talk about the house for a minute, the property you're trying to sell. Inspect that. And I'm not suggesting you do a home inspection. New Hampshire is a buyer beware state. We do not have Title V in New Hampshire. So if you hear that term, Title V, that's relative to your septics. We don't have that in New Hampshire. That's a Massachusetts term, and that's a Massachusetts law. Massachusetts law under Title V means you have to have a state-approved system in good operational order, and if you don't, you need to replace it immediately. Under New Hampshire law, it's buyer beware.